right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining me. It's Tuesday night. It's kind of late here on the Pacific Coast. But tonight we're talking about 3 simple tips for enhancing your memory. So I am Dr. Randall Gates, board certified chiropractic neurologist, also a chiropractic physician at Gates Brain Health. And at Gates Brain Health, we work with a variety of different neurological and autoimmune conditions. And we work with individuals' memory issues as well. With what's happening, and hello to everyone who's joining, with what's happening in our current society relative to, let's just say, let me turn the camera this way, relative to obesity and prediabetes and diabetes, we're going to have a tsunami, in my opinion, metaphorically, of memory care patients. And so often, many people out there are trying to say, okay, well, what can I do to enhance my memory on a day-to-day basis? What can I do to remember people's names? I get lost going places. What can I do to help myself with this? So hopefully this talk will give you a little better understanding of some of the general overview of how your memory works, how your brain encodes memories, and then things that you can do simply that may help you. So, with our brain, let me scoot back. All right, so this is our brain from the side. Here are our frontal lobes. Our frontal lobes connect to the medial temporal lobes, where my middle fingers are, deep down in there, for us to create memories. Now, you may be surprised that long-term memories, so for example, if you've ever known someone who has a memory disorder, they frequently will remember their childhood. So patients will often, or patient loved ones will often say to me, their memory for long-term events, names of childhood friends, that all is really good. It's just their short-term memory that's not as good. So it's important to know right off the bat that long-term memory really is stored in many different areas of the body. And even when the specific area involved with memory, termed the hippocampus or the hippocampal formation, is ablated, meaning it may be destroyed surgically, maybe there's a stroke, maybe there's a lot of scar tissue, the individual lots of times will still have lots of long-term memories. Maybe there will be a gap a couple years before that surgical event happened or a stroke happened, but their long-term memories are still largely intact. Now, what most of you are concerned about as it pertains to memory is more what we term short-term memory, working memory, things of that nature. And I feel it's also important to know that with your brain, let's see, here's my right side. The right side of the frontal lobe is more involved in connecting to the right hippocampus, deep down in here. Sorry, it's always so backwards. I'll get this one of these years. So the right frontal lobe connects to the right hippocampus much more powerfully for visuospatial information. So if you have problems with directions, we're more talking about like directions to different places. We're more talking about your right frontal lobe and its connection to the right hippocampus. Whereas if you're someone who has difficulty remembering names, we're more talking about how your left frontal lobe connects to the left hippocampus. So your left frontal lobe is more involved with like things such as verbal memory, whereas your right frontal lobe is more involved with visuospatial tasks. As an example, I remember growing up, I had a family member who was complaining that they couldn't find the directions to this one location. Now, this is way before Google Maps and things like that, because they had cut down the tree in a front yard at a corner, which was their landmark for how they knew where to turn and where not to turn. So that is very much a function of that right frontal lobe connecting into the right hippocampus. Whereas, as I mentioned before, names, verbal memory, for those of you taking tests, we're more talking about the left frontal lobe, the left frontal lobe and its connection to the left hippocampus. So in terms of tips for enhancing your memory, it's important to know that executive control processes, as they're termed in the literature, are really important for creating memories, i.e., you need to have brain arousal. So, however you want to achieve that, some people achieve it through more caffeine to boost their frontal lobes. Some people may take supplements, some people take medication, some people go out and they exercise vigorously. all of these things are intended to really enhance prefrontal lobe function and prefrontal lobe dopaminergic function largely. So that can help you with your memory. Also, something that's not commonly talked about is controlling one's carbohydrates. I've had a saying for a number of years that it's not patented, but protein and fat is where it's at, largely for the brain. So, protein and fat is where it's at. When we eat high carbohydrate meals, we have a proclivity for producing a lot of insulin, and that insulin seems to activate certain pathways, particularly which are deleterious for our memory area, like glycogen synthase kinase 3. You can go back and watch my Alzheimer's broadcast. But in essence, keeping one's carbs low can be a very easy tip for helping one's memory. So if you are studying for a test, or if you're saying, you know what, I'm going to drive to Bonnie's house and I'm going to remember how to get there without my Google Maps, well, having good dopamine function, doing things like that, like I mentioned, maybe that work with you for boosting your dopamine. Also, keeping one's carbohydrate content maybe a little bit lower in the hours preceding trying to memorize something or trying to execute a visuospatial task are important. Another phenomena that's not commonly talked about is the connection between smell and memory. So, for example, tonight, when I'm getting ready to do this broadcast, I have these flowers sitting next to me and they have a very pungent smell. So I will remember this broadcast for the rest of my life because of the pungent smell of these flowers. But you can use that to your advantage in that if you have, you can use a certain smell from an essential oil or a lotion if you're studying for a particular topic. If you have a math test, you may use one smell. If you have your English literature class, you may use a different smell. And by doing so, you can associate certain topics to certain smells. Now, smell in the entorhinal cortex, deep in the temporal lobes, and the piriform cortex is also involved. But the entorhinal cortex has direct connections into your memory area. That is your smell area. So it's a very primitive area, as we term it, whether you believe in evolution or you believe in how mammals develop. It's all kind of the same, and I'm not saying one is right or the other, but in essence, the way the brain develops, smell is a primitive area and it does fire the memory area. So hopefully you have a better understanding of how your memory works. Hopefully you understand that good dopamine function is really important for encoding memories as, in my opinion, lower carbohydrate loads prior to trying to memorize something, and then associating smells with a certain topic. These are just simple hacks, so to speak, that may be beneficial for helping your memory. I may be back tomorrow with a more detailed broadcast, maybe a PowerPoint broadcast on how all these cellular processes work and how other neurotransmitters can be really important. Okay, thank you for watching. Again, Dr. Randall Gates, board certified chiropractic neurologist and chiropractic physician at Gates Brain Health, signing off. Have a good night.